In this set of videos, we're going to be taking a look at two major topics. First, we're going to be looking at loops. So we're going to see how we can create loops in our programs to repeat certain lines of code. We're also going to take a look at files. So we're going to see how we can actually read from or write to a text file using our Java programs. So to get started, we're first going to be looking through loops. So to kind of start at the very beginning with this, we're first going to need to learn a new operator that we're going to have to make use out of pretty heavily when we create loops in our programs. It's going to be the increment and then its counterpart, the decrement operator. So the increment and decrement operators help to further simplify the process of updating the value in a variable. So we've got an example right here where we've got this number variable that we have declared. It's going to be of type int, and we're going to assign to it or initialize it with a 0 value. And then we've got three different lines of code underneath that, showing three different ways that we can add 1 to that variable. So the first one shows the longest or the most verbose way that we can do this by adding 1 to the number and storing the result back into itself. So we see we've got number plus 1. We take that result and assign that back into number. Alternatively, as we saw from some of our chapter 2 content, we could use the combined assignment operator instead to achieve that same functionality in a more concise way. So we see number plus equals 1. That basically achieves the same behavior as number equals number plus 1. Alternatively, we could also use the increment operator to achieve the same functionality in an even more concise way than that. So in this case, we're going to do number, and then we see the plus plus. So when we see two plus characters together like this, that's going to indicate that we're using the increment operator. So let's actually take a look at this. So we're going to come over to NetBeans. We'll go ahead and create a new project, make a new Java application. For this one, we're going to be dealing with both the increment and the decrement operators. So I'm going to go ahead and name my project inc and dec. So just shorthand for each one of those two. So we can click finish. And we'll go ahead and clean up some of the comments in this program. And adjust the style a little bit as well. And then right here inside of the main method, we'll go ahead and declare this variable. So we're going to have our int number equal to 0. And then what we can go ahead and do is just perform these different operations on it and then also print out its current value. So let's go ahead and do something like number equals number plus 1. So this is one way that we could add 1 to that value. So we'll go ahead and then print that to the console. So we'll print out number right here. So we can see after we've executed this line right here, when we print it out to the console, its value will be 1. We could then go ahead and do it with the combined assignment operator. So we have number plus equals 1. We'll then go ahead and print that out as well. So at this point now, currently the value of number is 1 because of this previous operation here. So when we go ahead and do this again, but using the combined assignment operator, now it's going to be updated to 2. So when we print this out to the console here, we're going to see the value 2. And then finally, we can do this with the increment operator. So we go ahead and shorten it down to just a plus plus. And then we'll go ahead and print this out once more. And now, because it was incremented to 2 from this line, when we do that once more right here, we're going to increment it to 3. So then when we print it out, we'll go ahead and see the value 3 from that third and final print statement. So we go ahead and run this, and we can see the values 1, 2, and 3 all printing to the console. So we can see the end result from performing this operation 3 different ways. So in addition to the increment operator, there's also going to be the decrement operator. So in this case, we're going to do minus minus instead of plus plus. So we see number minus minus here. That's going to be equivalent to number equals number minus 1. So let's take a look at the different ways we can subtract 1 from our value. So go ahead and minimize this, come back over here. And so then what we'll go ahead and do is after our third print statement, we'll add on to this by doing number equals number minus 1. So with this line, now what we're going to do is our 3 that we just got from executing line 17, we're going to subtract 1 from that, so we're going to end up with the value 2. We'll go ahead and print that to the console. So go ahead and put that right here. We'll then go ahead and do this with the combined assignment operator as well. So we'll do number minus equals 1. So then this will take the 2 that we just got right here. We'll subtract 1 from that. So we end up with 1. So if we go ahead and print this to the console, then this will print out the value 1. And then finally, we'll go ahead and do this with the decrement operator. So we'll do number minus minus. And then when we do this, we'll go ahead and print this out. So we're going to do the 1 that we just got from the previous operation. We're going to subtract 1 from it right here. So we just do 1 minus 1, which gives us 0. So this last print statement is going to print out 0. So when we do all of these, we're going to see the 1, 2, 3 for the 3 different ways that we can increment it. And then we're going to see 2, 1, 0 for the 3 different ways we can decrement it. So we go ahead and run that. Make our window a little bit taller. So we can see we've got our 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0. So that shows each one of the different ways that we can increment or decrement our value. Additionally, there are going to be 2 different ways to write the increment or decrement operator. So we can see right here, we've got 2 different print statements. In each one of these, we're just going to go ahead and actually perform the increment operation inside of the print statement itself. So this is another thing that we'll be able to do. But we should take note of the 2 different ways that we're doing this. In one of them, we're doing it with what is known as postfix, where we are putting the 2 plus characters after the variable. And in the other, we're doing prefix. So we're doing it with the 2 characters at the beginning or just before the variable. So let's see what happens whenever we do this. We'll go ahead and minimize this. Oops. So right here, we've got our number plus plus right now. So let's go ahead and take this. We'll go ahead and grab that. Actually, just cut it from right there. Move this extra space. And we're going to go ahead and put it in right here. Oh, moving the semicolon. So go ahead and run this and see what the output happens to be. So the way that we're doing this right now is we're doing number equals number plus 1. We're adding 1 to number, so it's going to become 1. Right here, we're doing the same thing with the combined assignment operator. So we're going to get the value 2. We're printing that out to the console right here. And then on this line, what we intend to do is increment it again. So it should be the value 3. So that 3rd print statement, this one right here, we should still get that value 3 right there. So go ahead and run this. And when we do this, we see that we get 1, 2, and then 2, 2, 1, 0. So this line right here, we see that we do not quite get the that incremented value for it. So kind of have to ask ourselves what exactly just happened there. So the problem with this is that if we use a postfix incrementer or a postfix decrementer, what's going to happen is that this operation, so adding 1 to number, is going to happen after everything else in that line has finished executing. So what that means is that since we put this in a print statement, we're going to execute that print statement first, and then we're going to increment it by 1. So it's going to print to the console, but since we didn't do the increment yet, it's going to print out the value that it already had, just the same as it had right here. So it's going to print out 2 again, and then it's going to increment the value. So if I go ahead and put in another print statement for it right here, where we just print out the value of number, we can go ahead and see that just after this line finished executing, it did actually increment it. And so then if we check it again right here, then we can actually see that value for 3. So right now we see we've got this 1 right here from our very first print statement, this 2 from our second print statement, this other 2 from our third print statement, that will be this line right here, and then this 3 from our fourth print statement, which would be this line right here. So in order to make sure that we are performing this increment after or before we've done any of the other actions or taken any of the other actions that are in that same line of code, we want to go ahead and change this to be a prefix. So So we're going to remove this, and we'll place it at the beginning instead. And then we'll just go ahead and comment this line of code out. We won't really need it anymore. So now if we go ahead and run this, we can see that we're getting 1, 2, and then 3. So now it's going to increment it first and then print it to the console. So we've kind of inverted the order of the operations for that line of code. So we get 1, 2, 3, and then we'll do 2, 1, 0. So as I've just demonstrated, whether we do postfix or prefix, that's going to determine the order of execution. With postfix, the value of number, that variable, is going to be printed to the console and then incremented. With prefix, the value of number is incremented and then printed to the console. So we just kind of invert the order. And additionally, the decrement operator also allows for either postfix or prefix. So you can do the same thing with the minus minus operation. Alright, so now that we've seen that little bit about increment and decrement, now we'll go ahead and take a look at our first loop. So this is going to be the while loop, where what we're going to do is we're going to have the keyword while. We then have a Boolean expression, so it's a lot like our if statements. We then have a pair of curly braces, so that's going to indicate the body of this while loop. And then we've got some statements inside of it that we're going to continuously execute as long as that Boolean expression is true. So the structure of a while loop is very similar to an if statement. The key difference is that the statements in a while loop will continuously be executed for as long as the Boolean expression is true. A while loop is going to be a pretest loop, which means that the expression is going to be checked to be either true or false before we ever attempt to execute the statements, even for the very first time. Additionally, we'll see this in a moment. I'll kind of demonstrate how you might run into this problem. But we want to be careful about creating infinite loops, so we want to make sure that the expression can eventually become false. The easiest way to achieve this is through the use of the increment or decrement operators. So let's take a look at this. So going back over here, we'll go ahead and make a new program. So for this next one, we're going to go ahead and call this one while loop demo. Click finish. And we'll go ahead and start cleaning up the code a little bit. And so right here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just make an int variable. This int variable is going to essentially be used as what I will refer to as a counter. So we're going to call it int count. We'll make it equal to 0. And essentially the purpose of this count variable is as long as this value is less than some upper limit that I'm going to set a little bit later, that's going to let us know that we want to keep executing our statements inside of our while loop. So for this, we're going to say while our count is less than some value, let's say 5. Then we want to go ahead and execute everything that's inside of this while loop. So for this one, we'll go ahead and do something simple. We'll just do a print statement. And let's go ahead and just print out, to start off with, the phrase hello world. So the way this is going to work is our count is initially 0. So the first time that we come to do this while loop, we're going to have 0 right here, less than 5. So 0 less than 5 is true. That means we'll go ahead and execute everything in the body of this while loop. So if we go ahead and run it, we'll see that it prints at least once. We'll then, when we hit the bottom of the body, so we hit this closing curly brace, because of the fact that this was true, we are going to go ahead and come back to the beginning and do this again. And in this particular case, because of the way that I've set this up, we are not changing the value of count yet. So if I were to run this, it will keep going on and on forever. So you can probably tell right here that it's continuously printing out statements, and my console output continuously gets longer and longer. So we'll just go ahead and stop that now. Okay, so at this point it printed out a lot of print statements. So we want to go ahead and fix this so that it does not do this. This would be the infinite loop that we're trying to avoid. So we're going to go ahead and add another line of code to this. So what we want to go ahead and do is change the value of count in such a way that eventually this statement can become false. So we're going to say that we just want to increment the value of count. So what this is going to do now is when we hit this line, we'll increment count. So count will go from being 0 to 1, just adding a value to it. We'll then hit the closing curly brace, come back to the top. We'll check this condition. We'll see that 1 is less than 5. That's true. So go ahead and print this out a second time. We come over to here. We'll increment the value of count to 2. We'll come back up here. 2 is less than 5. That's also true. So we'll go ahead and print hello world a third time. Right here, we'll increment it from 2 to 3. Come back up here, 3 less than 5. We'll go ahead and print this out a fourth time. We'll increment this value from 3 to 4. 4 is less than 5, so we'll go ahead and print this out a fifth time. And then when we increment this from 4 to 5, we check our condition. We'll see that 5 is not less than 5. So this condition is false, meaning that we're no longer going to be executing anything with this while loop. We are going to terminate it, essentially, and just move on to the next part of our code, which in this case would just be the end of the main method. So if I go ahead and run this, it's going to print out the phrase hello world 5 times. Go ahead and do this. You can see right here we've got hello world 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. To also go ahead and demonstrate the different values of count that we're getting from this, I'm going to go ahead and modify my print statement so that instead of printing out the phrase hello world, I'm just going to go ahead and say the value of count. So we're going to go ahead and just put this variable into our print statement right here so we can go ahead and see that value each time we go through this while loop. So go ahead and run this again. And so now we're just going to go ahead and print out the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is going to print out the 5 values that we got for count for as long as this statement right here was true. So that's everything from the value that we initialized it to all the way up until count was 5, but since that makes the statement false, we're not going to include that value. We're just going to have 0 through 4. So another way we could do this, we can actually do the opposite. So in the example that I just showed, we started from 0 and worked our way up to some upper limit. We could also start from some larger value and then work our way down until we get to either 0 or maybe some other lower limit. So in this example, we're going to start with this countdown variable at 10, and we're going to say while our countdown is greater than 0, so as long as the countdown is larger than 0, we will continuously print out this statement where we're going to say launching in and then the number for the countdown. In this case, we're using the decrement operator, so we're going to reduce the value of countdown. And then once we've finished doing all of this, we get to the end of this while loop. We have one final print statement where we're going to print out the phrase blast off. So let's go ahead and minimize this and put that together. So we're going to modify this a little bit to do countdown instead. We'll use the value 10. Right here, we're going to call it countdown, and we're going to say as long as it is greater than 0. Then what we want to go ahead and do is just print out that statement. So that's going to be with a printf instead now. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and say launching in, and then we're going to use %d. Since this is printf, we can go ahead and include a format specifier. So this will be a placeholder for some value that we want to put into this formatted string. Then we have our ... and then we're going to have the countdown. And then right here, we want to go ahead and modify this so that we're doing our countdown, but we're going to subtract from it because we want to make sure that we start at 10, but we eventually, by reducing this, get to a point where our countdown is not greater than 0 anymore. So we're going to keep reducing it every time we do this. And then afterwards, go ahead and include our print line statement right here, and we'll just say blast off. Okay, I'll make my output window a little bit taller so we can see all of this right there. So if we go ahead and run this, and then one other thing I need to include is the new line character. So we'll put a %n at the very end of this. Go ahead and run that one more time. So now we can get launching at 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then blast off right at the very end. Okay, so at this point, this is going to wrap up the introduction to the while loop. In the next video, we're going to start adding on to this by taking a look at how we can actually use this while loop in order to do some input validation. So basically what we're going to see is how we can make a request to the user, but But if they don't give us a valid input, we're not going to let them move on to the next step in our program. So we'll see how to do that in the next video.